My name is Tony Roberts. I'm the CTO, or Chief Transformation Officer of the Team Leadership Institute. I want to share with you today in this video how you build the high performance team. You know, I've traveled all over the country and have trained thousands and thousands of people of every state in the country. And I've heard a lot of leaders tell me that they have a hard time when they come in and take over a new team. Sometimes the team doesn't want to accept them. Sometimes they get off to a, let's say, rocky start with some of the team members. Sometimes they just don't gel with some of the team members. So what do we do? How do we keep that from happening? How do we make sure that we get a team that respects us, that is loyal to us, and that will seek high performance success? Well, it's all about how you build that team, how you transform that team from what they were, which may not be bad, to what they need to be to get to where you need them to get to. So I'm just going to go through sort of the steps of how you do that. Now, and I'm going to give you a lot of information out of my book. I've got a book called Why Try to Make Them Do It When You Can Make Them Want to? The Art of Influence. Now, I wrote this book just for this purpose, that it actually takes a leader from learning. In other words, you can have an 18-year-old kid has no skills, and he or she needs to earn the skills or learn the skills. They can read this book, and if they follow what it says, it will give them not only the theory, but the application to becoming a master leader. One of the big parts, important parts, is how you begin. In other words, building that team. So the first thing you do is when you come in and you take a team over, or you're given a team and you're promoted and you're coming onto that team, the first thing you have to do is you have to install a forum of open communications. You want them comfortable, them being your team, you want them comfortable telling you and talking to you about anything. Meaning, what a lot of leaders do is when they don't mind it when people come and they're giving them good news or good information. But when an employee brings a problem up, a lot of leaders don't handle that very well. They can get to where they blame the individual, or they can talk about the individual being negative, or they can ignore the individual. There's a lot of things. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about when you start out. Many years ago, I took over a financial institution. I took over as a regional vice president, and I had multiple branches and multiple locations, and I was given the position because the previous regional VP was not doing a good job at all. And so consequently, the loans and the sales numbers and the collections numbers were terrible. So anyway, so I had worked my way up, and I took that position, and the first thing I had to do are these steps I'm talking about. Now, one thing was the different locations didn't even consider themselves on the same team. In other words, we were all in the same region. But as far as the different branches were concerned, they were autonomous. They had nothing to do with the rest of the region. Their success nor failure had anything to do with the rest of the region. So the first thing you have to do is you have to open up communication to where they share and where they understand who they're supposed to share with. So, of course, I spent a lot of time going to the branches, and really the next thing you have to do is you have to earn their trust. You have to earn their trust. So, how did I earn their trust? Well, I earned their trust by helping them do what they do. I earned their trust by letting them know that I wanted them, each and every member of the different branches, which I spoke to everybody, not just the managers that directly reported to me. But I let them know that my concern was that they make the most money they can every month. Meaning, in this particular scenario, there was bonuses available for different performance standards. So what I shared with them is, look, I want you to get the max every month. It doesn't make sense to come to work and make this much when you can make a couple thousand more. So since we're going to be here the same amount of time, why don't we do it in a way where you can make the max? Now, is it good for the company to pay out more money? Absolutely, because that means that if they're paying out more money, the standards have been met and they're making a whole lot more money. So it's a win-win. Also, now I made more money when they made more money too. So of course I acknowledge that. I said we all make more money. It's a win-win. And I let them know openly that, yeah, I'm making more money too. It helps us all. Is that a bad thing? And of course their answer was, well, no, that's not a bad thing. So you build that trust. Now, not only did I talk about it, but like my job was to do evaluations, do assessments, make sure we're following the laws and the loan laws, regulations, things like that. Make sure the book's all balanced and everything was kosher. Well, when I was back there doing my paperwork, I would usually go to the back of the branch and sit in the back and do my paperwork. And I had lots of things I had to review and things like that. However, let's say that there were times when a huge number of customers would come in for loans and things and different things they needed, payments, phones would be ringing, and the staff would be overwhelmed. Now, I could have done like most leaders do and just continued to do my job, because I've got to do my job before I leave there, even if I have to stay till 10 o'clock at night and still drive 2 hours back to where I live, or 3 hours, whatever it is. But what I would do, and the way I earn trust and earn respect from these employees, who at first had no reason to open up to me, because they had actually had a succession of different leaders come in and not really do anything for them. So what I would do is, when that would happen, they'd get overwhelmed, I would get up and go help them, take their payments, answer their phones, take care of customers, give customer service. Now, this gives me an ability to show the type of customer service I expect from them. So when I talk to them about expectations, they've already got a clear example in their mind what I expect. Everything we do as leaders set the example. So, of course, I was doing it the way I wanted it done, the way it should be done. In other words, customer first, customer leads with a smile if at all possible. So I gave that kind of customer service, and I would take payments, and I would answer the phone, and sometimes even do loans for them, whatever it took, until the traffic died back down to where it was manageable for the staff again, and no customers were waiting an hour. And then I would go back to what it is I did. Now, if you think about that, if your boss actually came in, instead of just talking about we need to work harder, we need to get more done, we need to take care of these customers, actually helped you, what would that do for your feeling for your boss? Now, I'm pretty sure most of you are saying, well, I'd appreciate that. Well, they did. They really appreciated it. And, of course, it earned me that trust, that loyalty, that credibility. The credibility also came from, again, when I set the example and showed them how the customer service had to be done, then, of course, I had every right to ask them to do the same thing, because they knew that's what I did. For instance, in all of my branches, when a customer walked in the door, the closest employee to the door to the front of the office, would acknowledge them with we'll be right with you, hello, or it could be they're on the phone and there's a customer there and they just look at them and say, in other words, they acknowledge that customer. They let them know, hey, we know you're here. We're going to get to you as soon as we can. We want the customers to feel welcome and acknowledged. So that was just one example. But when I asked this of everybody else, of course, since I did it, everybody did it. They had no problem, because I was credible. I did what I asked them to do. So you have open communications by going in there, building trust and earning respect. And when you're in there, in other words, with your team, you never react negatively to anything they say or do. Now, here's what I mean by that. Yes, sometimes because of different belief systems and people think this behavior is okay and all that, and we'll talk about that. But sometimes somebody will say something and you think it's inappropriate or disrespectful. Well, that's when you keep your mouth shut and you smile and you say, well, let's talk about that one-on-one when we get a chance, okay? Now, if you have a chance, you can do it right then, because the best type of corrective activity is called on-the-spot correction. In other words, let's say that they were talking and they used some kind of profanity or something that you feel is wrong, improper, because you know it's a business need. In other words, you can't be talking like that in front of the customers. It's not professional. Okay. So then what you would do is you'd pull them off to the side where nobody could hear you but them, and you would explain, okay, so if you had this business, if you own this business, and I was using that type of language in front of your customers, would you be okay with that? Well, let me ask it this way. Do you feel that your customer is okay with it? Do you think it's going to promote the business and bring in more customers, or maybe give us a negative outlook and maybe hold back some customers? What's that going to do for us? In other words, you explain to them why, based on our goals, this doesn't work. And then you ask for behavior change. So since we've established that that's not the best type of language to use in front of our customers, can I get your commitment from now on you won't use that type of language? Will you do that for us? And you ask for the commitment. And then you enforce that. Now, but you also have to remember, there are things that we really can't give a second chance to. If it's any kind of illegal thing like sexual harassment or something like that, then we just have to tell them, okay, if this happens again, then it may result in termination. But for most things, they aren't that serious, or let's say they can't cause as many issues, or generally won't. So we can be a little bit more lenient. Now, where I'm going with this is research shows that your average person will need 6 exposures to the information with reinforcement in the middle in order to retain up to 90%. With that said, that means that we're going to have to be persistent enough and patient enough to actually give them those multiple exposures and understand new habits are not created just because you said it one time. We've got to be willing. And I've had employees that I've had to tell 10 times. But that's where you look at, is this employee doing it maliciously because they don't want to listen to me, they're in some kind of power play, or did they just forget, it slipped their mind, they went back to their old habit? Now, I will give you multiple chances, and I always gave multiple chances because I'm teaching you, I'm training you, I'm coaching you, so it takes time for that to sink in. But the minute I think you're doing it maliciously, we're going to talk about that, and that's going to be a different conversation, because you can't have an employee who won't do what's necessary to get the job done. But that's when I have that conversation, that's what the scope of the conversation is about. To work here, we got to have this. If you're not willing to do it or won't do it, that's fine. You just can't work here. So you have to be willing to have that conversation with them, okay? So you come in, you do the open communication, you earn your respect and trust. The next thing you want to do is you want to attach your goals of the organization to their personal goals, to their personal desires, meaning everybody wants something out of life. People don't come to work to get paid, even though they like to say they do. Everybody has aspirations in life. Some people want a sailboat and retire and sail off into the sunset. Some people want a brand new beach house. I mean, people have all kinds of aspirations. The key is we take the time to ask them, say, so what is it? How do you see your life, say, 10, 20, 30 years from now? What kind of things do you have? What kind of car do you drive? What kind of house do you have? What kind of income? How are you living? And they will tell you after that question what it is they're after, as long as they trust you and respect you. So when they tell you that, that's when you say, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll make a deal with you. If you will help me get this group to these goals, then I'll give you 100% doing everything I can to help you develop and get ready for your goals and reach your goals. In other words, I'll help you get that sailboat the best I can if you'll help me. Fair enough? And I can tell you, out of the hundreds of employees I've led, I've never had anybody not take me up on the deal. Because think about it, it's a win-win. Anytime you're dealing with people, you always want to focus on what's in it for me, because we all have that same question. Well, why should I do this? What's in it for me? What do I get from it? So you want to make sure to attach their goals, their personal goals, to our goals. This little caveat here. Let's say that a person's personal goals aren't what you think are admirable personal goals. Don't ever belittle or laugh at or be sarcastic toward or try to attack their personal goals in any way. If you do, you lost them. They're not going to respect you. You'll have no credibility, and they won't want to work with you. Okay. So what you want to do with the team, once you've got this open communication out there, and you're earning respect and trust on a daily basis because you're setting the example, and you want to also, when you come in, don't make a lot of changes to start with. Take a couple of weeks and evaluate who's doing what, how well they do it. If there's room for improvement, not improvement because you want to change. If there's room for improvement, meaning there's some things we can adjust to actually get us to the goals quicker, more efficiently, more effectively, better result, higher quality result, then these are the things we're looking for. And then we got the team communicating, everybody's open, everybody's on the same page now. Like in my case with the financial region, one of the first things I had to do was remind them, no, you're part of this region, you're part of this region, you're part of this region. I had to tell every manager, every employee in every branch, you're part of this region. Region, then you. Region, then you. And I had to get them to commit to, yes, we're part of the region. Okay? Because they got to know that the region has certain goals to help the company get its goals. And the branch has goals to help the region get its goals. So we're all tied together. Okay? So then you let them know once you've done the observation in, usually a couple of weeks. On multiple locations, it might take a little bit longer because, of course, you have less time with them and more travel and things of that nature. So then what you do is once you've got that communication, then you tell them in a meeting, in other words, you bring them all together and you talk about, okay, guys, here's some challenges I've found in our operation. I want to get your feedback and your thoughts on it. And then based on actual goals, you give them observed standards. In other words, here's the standard. Here's where we're supposed to be at. Here's our productivity based on observation on this date, this time. Okay. First of all, how do we fix that? How do we close that gap in productivity? And you let them come out with ideas. Now, the best thing is if you can get somebody, and by leading questions, if you can use those and get them to give you the idea that fixes it, that builds teamwork, that builds credibility, that builds trust, commitment. Little tidbit of information. Research shows that when you use someone else's idea instead of your own, they are 38% more likely to do it now and in the future because it was their idea instead of yours. So build that commitment any chance you get. If you get them to give you a good idea and then a good plan to produce that idea, and then say, okay, that's a great plan, let's use it. Will you do it? And you get them to commit to it, you're good. They will do it. Now, so we're only doing the things that are needed, the changes that are needed to produce the higher level results, and we want them to come up with them so you get the buy-in, if possible. If not, I might have to say, well, guys, have you thought about this? Because if we did this, it would get this. You might have to do that, and that's fine. But anytime you can get them to come up with it, it's actually a little bit more effective. All right, so now we've talked about, in our team, we came together and we talked about how we're going to actually change, what things we need to change and how we're going to do it and what results it's going to get us, right? And then we share the plan. In other words, we come up with a plan together of how we're going to implement it, when, in what pieces, in what order. We're very specific about who's going to do what when, and everybody commits to it. Remember in this, the more you can get them to say, oh, I can do this by this, or I'll do this, the better off you are. You don't really want to do the whole you do this, you do that thing, because it doesn't work nearly as well. I'm not saying it doesn't work at all, but it doesn't work nearly as well. You don't want it to be punitive. You don't want it to be coercive. You want it to be an open environment, and you want to tie their success, the organization's success, our region's success, everybody's success to these activities. So everybody gets that feeling of importance, that they matter. They make a difference for everybody. You're bringing it together, and you're building that team foundation. Now, once you've attached those goals, then what you want to do is you want to observe more and make sure you're including everybody in these conversations. Of course, you're going to adjust as necessary. One plan, if it doesn't work the way we need it, we don't get the result, then we stay flexible and we adjust. That's one thing you always want to tell them. One thing I always do with all my teams, and I've had many teams, award-winning teams, I always, when I would go over someone's job description, because this is one of the first things I would did with each member, I would sit down individually, one-on-one, and say, here are my expectations. Now I'm talking job description and behaviors. I lay everything out. And then I get their commitment. They will do those because those are what's required to produce the result we're after. And then once they committed to it, you've got to enforce those expectations consistently, persistently, and constantly. You never pass up an opportunity to enforce the expectations. Because, for instance, you see an employee doing something you and everybody else knows is unacceptable, or at least you said it was. And you figure, well, I'll cut him a break, I won't say anything. Well, the very next time you see them do it and you say something, the first thing out of their mouth is going to be, you didn't say anything last time. So you're creating your own conflict. You've got to pull them off to the side and say, what I observed is, what we agreed on, what I want to see in the future is. And then you give them the right standard and you enforce that. And yes, you do have to be like a broken record, and we'll have to give multiple exposures because you've got to help them create a new habit. That's what we do as leaders. If we don't help them create the new habit, it's not going to get created. So we give those observations as on-the-spot corrections. You also want to make sure that whenever you evaluate individuals, whenever you're talking to them about on-the-spot corrections, whenever you're doing any kind of review, everything you say is always based on codified goals. In other words, the organization, the region, they have a mission. Even if you have to create that mission, you know what it is. But you write these goals down, these standards, if you will. For instance, in finance, we have standards in loan volume, we have standards in delinquency, we have standards in bad debt. So we have standards. So that allowed me to attach everything I requested from them to the company standards. So it was never Tony wants, Tony needs, Tony believes. my opinion entered into it nowhere. It was always, look, here's the standard. How do we get to it? Here's the standard. How do we get to it? Here's the standard. Are you saying you can't do it? You can't do this? Okay, you can do it. All right, will you? In other words, it's a conversation that is devoid of conflict and confrontation when you're using standards to evaluate and guide and coach instead of your opinion. When you say things like, well, what I need is, what I want is, in their head, I can tell you what your employee is saying. I don't give a crap what you need. I don't give a crap what you want. Rightfully so, because it's not your company. And of course, now I own my own company, and I still don't talk that way because it gets people's mind in a negative loop and off of the goals. Our job is to keep them focused on the goals. We want them thinking, okay, loan volume, loan volume, loan volume, delinquency, delinquency. You want them thinking of what we're after, not why is Tony such a jerk? Why does he talk to me that way? Why does he treat me that way? We don't want them thinking that. We want them coming to work and having no distractions, be able to focus on what we're after. Okay? And when we refocus them, for instance, let's say you told me during that conversation, well, Tony, you know, I've always wanted a sailboat. I've always wanted to retire, and me and my wife just sail around the world. Okay, so now that I know what your goals are, every now and then when I see you're a little bit down or maybe not, you know, on top of your game, I can come in and say, hey, are you getting close to that sailboat? Are we getting there? And you're going to think about it. Say, well, yeah. And if there's any room where I can help, like, okay, so you know, if we reach this standard, that's another $1,000 for your sailboat. Do you want that? Now, of course, what would you say? Yeah, who wouldn't? All right. Now, so we've gone over the individual's duties and their goals. We've attached them to our goals. We've totally defined our expectations. You must totally define your expectations. And in not only the job description and the duties, but in the behaviors. And I always followed up every conversation about duties and job description with, and anything else I ask you to do that is legal, moral, and ethical. And they'd be like, well, what do you mean? Okay, so what I mean is you work in a branch and you don't have a cleaning crew. So who sweeps the office, who cleans the office, who vacuums the office, and who cleans the restaurant? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, let's see. There's 6 of you that work there. There's no cleaning crew. Who's going to have to keep it clean? Should I drive 4 hours to come clean your office? Well, no. So who's going to clean it? Should the people who actually use it clean it? And, of course, I've always had them say, well, yeah. So that means you guys have to work up a schedule to take care of everything, right? Yeah. Now, I will say this. So with that, in that particular conversation, one of the very first things when I went around to the region, to the different branches, when I was taking over, I noticed that all their bathrooms were nasty. They just weren't clean. So after the next time I went around, you know, I made it a point in the next few days to go back to every branch. And as I traveled to the branches, of course, I wore a suit and a tie and, you know, the typical corporate look. But anyway, so the first thing I did when I got into the branches is I went to the back, took my suit off or my suit jacket off, rolled my sleeves up, took my tie, took it off, and I went in and cleaned their bathroom spotless. And then I called the entire staff and I said, come look at this. And they're all like, wow. So now this is how I want your bathroom to look every time I come in here. If I'm willing to clean it, if it's my job, then it's your job. Agreed? And of course everybody said, well, I guess so. And because I did that for the 3 years that I led that particular region, never saw a dirty bathroom again. People don't mind giving you what you're willing to give to them. So how much credibility did I build when I first, before I even said anything about the bathrooms, went in and cleaned them, showed the standard, and said, I want you to meet this standard. Will you do that? Gives you a lot of credibility. Okay? Yes, and I know that some of you are saying, well, I shouldn't have to clean the bathrooms. Well, you're going to find when you're dealing with people, in order to earn trust, respect, and credibility, there's a lot of things that we would prefer not to do, but it makes our job so much easier in the long run, meaning we go through so much less hassle and conflict because we took the simple steps to earn that respect and credibility. Now we're getting rid of years of confrontation and resistance just by doing that. So it's definitely worth it in the long run. All right. So the next thing you want to do when you're observing, you know, we'll take that couple of weeks to observe. You want to observe each individual and see what they know, what they don't know as far as their job, how well they perform, maybe areas where they could use some improvement. You also want to note any areas where they're really good at what they do, where they got a lot of talent, a lot of skill, They're a good example to emulate for others. And then you want to acknowledge those things. So you don't just go around saying, well, we need to fix this and this, and we could do this. It's not all about what's broke. It's also about what's done well. One of the things you want to do to build a high-performing team is learn to be as vocal in your recognition of success and high performance as you are in your recognition of areas for correctivity or correcting people. So then what you want to do once you've, well, and this is an ongoing thing, by the way. Constantly you're acknowledging excellence, and you're also on the spot correction where there's room or opportunity for improvement. So now you want to also find out the individual's aspirations, like we talked about back in the goals conversation, so you can attach them. And you got to set the example. The most important thing is to remember is people will give you what you give them. If you want high performance, I guess we need to cut that part out. If you want high performance from your team members, then you got to give them high performance. In other words, you got to set the bar, set the standard, show them what you're talking about. And so when you do that, that also, of course, earns credibility. It makes things go smoother, more effectively. But just as importantly, it builds relationship. They realize that you're one of them. You're part of the team. It's not Tony and team. It's team. We are together getting this accomplished. And when you build those relationships, people come to work smiling. They do everything they're supposed to do. They leave smiling. As far as my team, my region, so when I got there, they had a claim to fame. Their claim to fame was they were the worst region in the company, and they were proud of it because at least they were number one. That's really what they told me. And of course, that's sort of not the number one that I'm into. So we had to have a philosophical discussion there. Anyway, so in 18 months, we went from the worst in the company in every category to the best in the company in every category. So it's all, now I will say this, because some of you are probably thinking, well, Tom, did you keep all the same team members? No. You know, what you find is when you're building when you take over a team, now if I was building a team, then I would be able to keep it, okay? Because I'll hire the right ones. And if I do hire somebody that doesn't fit, then they'll leave quickly because we'll have that conversation. I'll ask them to meet the standards, and they'll just say, well, Tony, I don't want to do this. And I'll say, well, go find something you want to do. Be happy. But when you're taking over a team, especially a team where the employees have been used to, in some cases, not doing anything, coming to work, drawing breath and drawing pay, what happens is when a leader comes in and asks them to do their job, that's it, just ask them to do their job. And not even mostly, meaning I didn't say Tony wants, Tony needs. I attached every activity that I requested to the goals of the organization and what they're getting paid for. So, but you'll even find with that, some people are so used to doing whatever it is they want to do, they just can't get back with the program. They just won't do it. And so they've got to fall by the wayside. So I didn't have to fire anybody, but a lot of people agreed to, after I was very persistent about expectations. And when I say persistent, just having to talk, okay, here's what you agreed to, here's what we are, what we're going to do. And after a while, some people just can't take that kind of attention. Most people can't, actually. And that's why you give it to them, to make them make a decision. Do you want to work here or not? I'm going to love you either way, but to be on this team, you got to do this. Now, are you willing to do it or not? And you act and make a decision. So I probably had about 40% turnover in that 18 months. And then from then on, kept everybody was good to go. But so you will, when you come into a team that's dysfunctional and you fix it, you're going to lose some people if you're doing the right thing. I mean, unless you get really lucky. However, if you build the team from scratch and you get the right people and you start treating them this way and you earn their respect and trust, even when you ask for those high standards in their performance, you couldn't run them off. They'll love working with you, and that's what it's about. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed this information. Again, I talk about this in the book, why I try to make them do it. You make them want to. It goes much more in detail. So I just wanted to share this with you so you can get an idea of the thing you can do as a leader. If you do everything we talked about in this video, I guarantee you'll start building that high-performance team. So we're going to do more of these. This is just the first one, and in each one I'm going to add new skills Just to give you an idea, I'm going to do videos on building the environment, creating the environment that makes them highly successful, highly productive, assessing team members, how you assess each individual, and things. I'm going to take you all the way through leadership and mastering leadership with these videos. So I just wanted to give free tools for people to learn, and like for a new leader who's trying to learn how to master leadership, that's what this is about. Or for someone who just wants to add some skills, or for somebody you're getting resistance and conflict. These are the skills to clear things up. Okay, you can read them all at one time if you want. You can watch the videos. Either way, I hope you enjoy them and much success. Thank you.